Good afternoon. Today we have the 10th Wednesday talks of MURCIR in 2024. Welcome to our meeting. And today's guest speaker is a very prominent researcher from Near East University, Köprülü, Professor Nur Köprülü. She is also chairperson of the Department of the Political Science in Near East University. Before starting to talk about her brief CV, maybe I should start with the CV of MURCIR. MURCIR as an acronym needs to be clarified for some of you. Maybe that's why it's a good idea to start with the opening of the acronym. Marmara University Research Center for International Relations. It's a 30 years old research center. And it had been always an important the center for academia, prominent academia members for this last 30 years. Please follow our activities through social media accounts, and if you subscribe to our accounts and like our videos, it will promote our studies more. So if it is necessary to start our session right now, we need to start with the short biography of our guest. So as I mentioned before, Professor Nur Köprülü is a chairperson of the Department of Political Science in Near East University. She is graduated from Eastern Mediterranean University for her the baccalaureate, and later for the master and PhD degrees. She is a graduate of the Middle East Technical University. She is an expert on Arab Springs and identity, opposition, democratization in Jordan. And as you know, today we are planning to discuss about the latest developments in the Middle East, and you know, Jordan played a very critical role in that process. So actually, we really wonder what is the situation in Jordan, what kind of the reasonings exist about the contemporary developments, the contemporary policies of Jordanian government. I'm sure Professor Nur Köprülü will clarify all these questions for us. Thanks for your the participation to our program, and we are listening to you.
Zuhal Hocam, thank you very much, first of all, for your kind invitation. I'm so happy to be here with the participant, the colleagues as well. And I will try my best actually to answer the questions that you addressed a few minutes ago. Let me also share my screen. I prepared, let's say, a short presentation for today. Well, when we were talking to Zuhal Hocam, what can be the title of this, let's say, talk? The first thing that came to my mind was to focus on the balancing act of the Kingdom of Jordan, because when we look to the country's foreign policies in Middle East and North Africa region, Jordan's position, particularly with respect to the Arab-Israeli war, has always been central. And within this respect, Jordan most of the time needed to balance its relations with the not just the extra-regional actors, but also with the key regional actors in Middle East. So that was the main motivation, and I will try my best to also manifest how Jordan is also coping with, the repercussions of the war in Gaza. But before I move on to the Jordanian foreign policy and the key pillars that construct Jordanian foreign policy currently, I would like to give you a broader, let's say, context with respect to the war in Gaza, because in order to understand what's going on since 7th of October, I believe we need to definitely refer to the fact that it has been also mentioned by many scholars of Middle East studies that this, what's going on since 7th of October is actually the culmination of a long sequence of events since the first Arab-Israeli war, which was during 1948 and 49. So nothing is actually happening in a political vacuum. And this is very, very important to see the bigger picture actually in the region. I wanted to mention with this regional structure because when we look to the Cold War years and when we look to the Palestine question, which emerged basically with 58, 48, 59 Arab-Israeli war, the repercussions to the regional, to the countries in the region. Main countries that had let's say the biggest number of Palestinians into its border was definitely the Kingdom of Jordan. So Jordan has become the main hosting country of the Palestinian refugees. And Jordan has become the only Arab country granting citizenship. So this has led Jordan to become really an important, a vital actor at the heart of the Arab-Israeli conflict. And there was also a Black September issue in 1970, which was right after the 67 war, that we had another repercussion of the Palestinian-Israeli question on the Jordanian territory, which led the PLO to be expelled from Jordan. And then, you know, we have seen that PLO moved to Lebanon. Another repercussion, the question of Palestine has also been seen in the Lebanese civil war, which was between 75 and 89. I would like to start from this historical trajectory that led Jordan to be one of the vital actors in the region, particularly with respect to this conflict, because Jordan, with the end of the First Arab-Israeli War, annexed West Bank and East Jerusalem. This has been a very important, a critical decision of King Abdullah I, and which also led West Bank to be under Jordanian control until 1967 war, which is also known to be the Six-Day War. So with the 6 Days War, West Bank became under the control of Israel. So we can say that Jordan lost West Bank with the 67 war. During this period of time, we need to mention that there has been different waves of Palestinian migration to Jordan. First, with the First Arab-Israeli War, the second wave was during the 67 war, and then we also had Gulf returnees. We call them as Gulf returnees who migrated to Jordan with the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. But of course, I can't say that. There is one monolithic Palestinian community in Jordan. For instance, Lurie Brandt wrote on this and stated that basically when we look to the Palestinian population in the Kingdom of Jordan, we can even divide them into 4 different categories. So we have still the Palestinian refugees living in the refugee camps, but we also have Palestinian origin Jordanians that they are actually feeling themselves Jordanian. But we also have Palestinian Jordanians who are Palestinian descent but having Jordanian citizenship. Some of them, they still also retain their Palestinian identity. So there is no one monolithic Palestinian community in Jordan as well, although they were granted the right to citizenship. Now, this was basically the picture that we had during the Cold War, with the end of the Cold War. And we had Oslo Peace Accords in 1993, which led Yasser Arafat and Isaac Rabin actually to recognize each other, which was a breakthrough. I need to mention this because without Oslo, it was not actually very, in quotations, possible for Jordan to recognize Israel because of this Palestinian demographic structure in the country. So with the Oslo Accords, Jordan found itself more comfortable and maybe to also justify this policy that it can recognize, let's say, the kingdom can recognize Israel. So Jordanian-Israeli normalization of relations is also dating back to 1994. No need to mention that Egypt has become the first Arab country recognized in Israel in 1978 with Camp David. And we also had the second country recognizing Israel in the Arab world. It was Jordan in 1994, right after the Oslo Accords. So what were the main characteristics that let's say, it can help us to figure out the landscape of Middle East just before the 7th of October. Basically, just before the 7th of October, the political landscape in the region was constructed, or in a way rest on the paradigm of normalization, in which Jordan also had some concerns about this normalization. For example, the deal of the century, which has been initiated by the former president of the United States, Donald Trump. Again, the US position in terms of moving United States Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And then another important issue which really marks normalization was the Abraham Accords, which was inaugurated in 2020, which included first United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. And just before the 7th of October, there was also a possible normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. But then we had the outbreak of this war. So basically, just before the war, the political landscape of the Middle East region, particularly if I refer to, the area that Jordan is in fact located, there has been the paradigm shift. What was this paradigm shift? Yes, the international community, the countries in the region, they support two-state solution, but normalizing Israel's normalization of relations with the Arab countries is not actually an obstacle in front of the two-state solution. So the centrality of perhaps solving or settling the Palestine-Israeli issue lost its salience, I can say. Simultaneously, when we look into the key pillars that construct Jordanian foreign policy, we can see three important actually dynamics since the establishment of the Emirates, since the establishment of the kingdom in 1946. Jordan, in terms of its sources, it's actually a vulnerable country. And that's why Jordanian economy is definitely dependent on foreign aid. For some, can also be regarded as a semi-rentier state because of this. And that's the reason that in this Jordanian studies, we basically see writers that they pay attention to regime security, budget security issues around, let's say, revolving around studying Jordan, such as Curtis Ryan, Larry Brown. They all refer to this regime security or budget security issues. Another important point that construct or can be regarded as one of the key pillars of Jordanian foreign policy is no doubt the Palestinian issue. Because since the beginning, as I was trying my best to explain, let's say earlier in my talk, Palestine issue was something indispensable, not just to domestic politics of Jordan, but also it was really demarcating, shaping, constructing Jordanian foreign policy. Let me give you a critical example in this respect, because as I said, West Bank was annexed by Jordan with the end of the first Arab-Israeli war. And Jordan has become the first Arab country, the only Arab country granting citizenship to the Palestinian migrants that they fled to Jordanian borders. And until 1967 Arab-Israeli war, West Bank was controlled and East Jerusalem was under Jordanian control. But with the 1967 war, Jordan lost the West Bank territories. But in 1988, there are several reasons for this, definitely. But in 1988, King Hussein decided to disengage from the West Bank territories. This was a very important policy shift, let's say paradigm shift in the kingdom's history, because in 1988, the decision of King Hussein was definitely related with the fact that Jordan is Jordan and Palestine is Palestine. In other words, Jordan is not going to be an alternative homeland for the Palestinians. This was also something triggered by the right-wing political parties in Israel by the late 1970s, that, well, actually, Jordan can become Palestine. And then this definitely alarmed King Hussein to take this, let's say, action to disengage from the West Bank. So in this respect, I mean, it was also part of the Hashemite kingdom's identity politics that Jordan is Jordan and Palestine is Palestine. In other words, supporting two-state solution. And I have to also address here that Jordanian-Israeli peacemaking in 1994 is a guarantee for the kingdom that Israel recognized Jordan as the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, not as a homeland for the Palestinians. Another important point that always shapes policy is definitely its close ties with the Western countries, particularly with the United States. And Jordan also traditionally had traditional protectors, because, as I said, it was economically vulnerable, and let's say we don't have enough available land. That's why Jordanian economy has always been heavily dependent on the external aid and, let's say, donations. So the relations with the United States, the relations with the Gulf countries, particularly with Saudi Arabia and UAE, have always been central in terms of this regime security, or I can say budget security for Jordan. So the the Jordanian farmers, since the Arab uprisings, has started to also have something new. I need to also refer to my professor Meliha Altunışık, because we recently published an article about Jordanian foreign policy and how, with the Arab uprisings, but basically since 2017, how Jordan also shifted towards diversifying its ties with other regional actors, including Turkey and Qatar. So Jordan, since the Arab uprisings, actually found itself in a position not just to rely on the traditional protectors, the United States, the Gulf countries, and Israel perhaps, but also to have cordial ties and diversifying its ties with Ankara and Doha. One of the main, let's say, cause of this diversification of Jordanian foreign policy is rooted in, as I just stated a few minutes earlier, the changing political landscape in the region. Felt itself that it was marginalized in the region, because it was one of the, let's say, two countries that recognize Israel and normalize its ties with Israel. But now with Abraham Accords, there is a tendency towards normalizing Israel as an actor in the international system. And the deal of the century has also was not very much, I can say, accepted full-heartedly by the Kingdom of Jordan, because it may nullify the two-state solution. So it may also can affect this identity politics, which is centered on Jordan is Jordan and Palestine is Palestine. What factors have been driving Jordan's recent foreign policy moves and alignments? We can see that Jordan is diversifying its ties, but this is not just related with the regional landscape, but I have to say that there are also domestic factors that motivated Jordan to take such a kind of an action. And I need to also underline that Jordan's peacemaking with Israel, and even until the war in Gaza, it started to set back for several reasons. They signed the peace treaty in 1994. But for example, during the 25th anniversary of the peacemaking, there was no special celebration of this peacemaking in Jordan. So the relations started to be, let's say, set back, particularly with the developments that I was just referring to, particularly with the deal of the century, and then the status of Jerusalem. What's also going on in Jerusalem because Jordan also still claims that it has the custodianship over the holy places in East Jerusalem. So this is the key topic for today. How the war in Gaza then has, let's say, what sort of repercussions the Gaza war had on Jordan. Geographically speaking, Jordan is actually at the heart, at the core of this region because of its longest border with Israel. As I said, because it's close ties with the West Bank that goes back to 1949, 1950. One of the main priority for Jordan since the beginning of the war in Gaza was centered on two main pillars. The two-state solution is the only path to achieve peace and sustainable peace in the region. So there should not be any, let's say, setback from the two-state solution. And the second point is that always Jordan fears, which is again something related with the survival of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, is Jordan's concern with respect to any potential forced displacement of Palestinians into Jordanian borders, because this can trigger not just the domestic issues, but as I said, the Jordanian kingdom's survival and durability itself. The war in Gaza then led us to once again, revisit maybe the US relations with the Kingdom of Jordan as well. And we have the US bases in Jordan. This is very important for Jordan's security, for example. But according to Curtis Ryan, I read one of the latest articles that he was referring to the repercussions of the war in Gaza and Jordan. And he said something that really, I think, important. And that's why I would like to underscore the US military presence is a double-edged sword. I mean, when you take into consideration the kingdom's position. Yes, the kingdom is in need of, let's say, security. And kingdom, for a long period of time, is one of the main strategic, let's say, partner of the United States. But at the same time, the domestic opposition is, since the first day that the war started in Gaza, is protesting. For example, we have the protests in the form of pro-Palestinian, let's say, form. So, and also we have let's say, US position among some of the, let's say, opposition groups. So this is something really very important for Jordan. On the one hand, it needs to keep its close ties with the United States because it is one of its strategic, we can say, partner. And Jordan's regime security, to some extent, is also related with this close ties and also having close ties with Israel. But on the other hand, the domestic opposition is growing day by day, which is not very much actually would like to see a very close affinity between United States and opening, let's say, Jordanian territory for US bases. So this is the reason that I would like to use the word balancing. Jordan is not just balancing, actually, it's not just using this policy of balancing at the Middle East stage, with the external actors and the regional actors, but Jordan needs to also have a balancing policy at the domestic level. So this is one of the main things that mostly we say that Jordan is actually walking on a political tightrope. And it's not a very easy, actually, policy to uphold currently. If I may also give reference to Jordan's foreign minister, Ayman Safadi. He stated that, he stated that Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu was seeking to ignite a regional war with Iran to deflect attention from the war in Gaza. That's why we need to pay attention to the war in Gaza and what's going on there, rather than bringing escalation. Yes, we can definitely say that there's a series of attempts in terms of this war, but it's still, at least for today, in today's conjuncture, I can definitely say that Jordan has become one of those countries to contain any kind of escalation. So for Ayman Safadi, the foreign minister of Jordan, such statements of the political elites in Jordan aims to rebuild Jordan's position both locally and regionally. A very prominent Jordanian journalist, Osama al-Sharif, also stated that Jordan is aware of the need to preserve the peace treaty to protect the kingdom's national security in light of the deteriorating security situation in the West Bank and most recently in Gaza. Regarding the Israel-Iran rivalry, Jordan's foreign minister Safadi also made critical statements, and one of these statements was, Jordan will do the same, even if it was Iranian drones or missiles, but we will do the same regardless of where those drones are from Israel, from Iran, from anybody else. Our priority is protect Jordan and to protect Jordanian citizens. I just wanted to interpret this sentence, and I would like to give, let's say, pay attention to it, because most of the time we can also argue that when Jordan, let's say, was trying to prevent the missiles, the drones coming from Iran, it was also, let's say, seen like that. It is protecting Israel, and it really, stand with Israel right now. Although until recently, Jordan was trying to support the two-state solution, a humanitarian ceasefire. So how and what happened, and that's why Jordan became, let's say, more close with Israel. Perhaps at today's conjuncture, I would rather say that here the main concern for Jordan is basically its regime security and its stability. I mean, rather than perhaps, let's say, taking a side, I definitely can argue for today's conjuncture that Jordan doesn't want to see the escalation of this war. Perhaps this might be the main priority for the Kingdom of Jordan. As King Abdullah also stated recently, Jordan will not be a battlefield for any party, and protection of Jordanian comes above all else. After discussing Jordan's ties with the United States, I need to also pay attention to the kingdom's ties with Israel. As I just stated, with the deal of the century, with Abraham Accords, Jordan found itself in a position to be marginalized from the regional, let's say, core political atmosphere. And now Jordan is also trying to pay attention to the fact that the two-state solution is the only path towards having sustainable peace in the region. And regarding also taking into consideration the domestic opposition, which is growing day by day since the 7th October, Jordan is also trying to balance its position vis-a-vis the growing opposition as well. And for example, the energy for water agreement with Israel had to stop despite its intended finalization before the 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference. So, and Ayman Safadi also added that the current circumstances will not allow any kind of interaction with the Israelis. So the peace agreement between the two countries will become a document collecting task. I think this is really a very important message, not just to Israel, but to the United States, that at least at the discourse level, the Jordanian political elites is paying attention to the fact that what's going on in Gaza actually is such a kind of a red line issue for Jordan and Jordan's stability and Jordan's definitely regime security. And they also consider that any action can also be related with, nullifying the peace treaty. At least we have all these at the discourse level, as I said, but I need to also mention that Jordan also asked its ambassador from Israel back on the 1st of November 2023 last year. Jordan also supporting the case on ICJ regarding Israel, and time to time Jordan's foreign minister is accusing Israel of committing war crimes. After discussing this external and regional landscape that Jordan is located in, I would like to also give, let's say, more information about Jordanian domestic politics as well. Jordan is actually having a new opposition. We can say this started even before, by 2000 onwards, but particularly with the Arab uprisings, or we can say Jordan's spring, since 2011, there is a growing influence of an East Bank-based group, which is called Hirak, which is an Arabic word, but it also refers to means movement. And this Hirak does not have any Palestinian element, and it is basically formed by East Bank tribes, has become very vocal in terms of asking, struggling with corruption, asking for economic rights, as well as, to some extent, political reform. And the post-October 7 era has also led us to see the protests coalition bringing different groups, cross-cutting ideological groups from leftist to Islamist to nationalist, demonstrating what's going on, demonstrating against what's going on in Gaza in terms of this humanitarian crisis. And Jordanians have taken to the streets in protest for the last 6 months. So in this respect, we can see that the shifting towards, particularly the normalization discourse just before the 7th of October now has changed to some extent with the war in Gaza. But of course, we will going to see in upcoming, perhaps months, to what extent the Abraham Accords will going to, preserve its salience, at least among the Gulf countries, and what is going to be the feature of the Saudi-Israeli normalization. They did not actually, terminate this relationship, but it seems like that for a while it has been paused. But with the US initiatives, in the short term, I think we can also see the growing role of Saudi Arabia, bin Salman, referring also to the two-state solution, as well as, any possible talks between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Regarding King Abdullah, Jordanian king's relations with US President Joe Biden, we also know that time to time they're, in communication, and most of the time the king is emphasizing the ending of the war in Gaza, which is the only way to de-escalate any regional tension. Jordan, during this period of time, is trying to balance its ties with the United States, Israel, and the Gulf region, but also trying its best to support its regime security, which is actually coming first at all times. Sorry. When we also look at the public opinion during this period of time, it was not just among the Jordanian citizens, but basically the Arab street has shown in many public opinion polls that they consider Palestinian cause as an Arab issue, not just as a Palestinian issue. And those countries that already normalized their ties with Israel, such as Morocco, Egypt, and Sudan, we can definitely see that in the recent polls, there has been, let's say, increase in the number of, for example, regarding the Palestinian cause, as an Arab issue. In Morocco, this number, it was 59% in 2022, but with the war in Gaza, this, the perception of the Moroccan people, let's say, reached 95%, and Morocco is one of those countries that recently normalized its ties with Israel. Again, in Egypt, it was 75% before the war, but now it is 94%. People, they think in Egypt, in Sudan, and elsewhere, in Saudi Arabia as well, that the Palestinian issue actually a common issue for all Arabs. I would like to also share another figure that what's new about this war, perhaps, because we have seen different Arab-Israeli wars, but what is perhaps new about the war in Gaza, which can also make Jordan's position in the region also very critical, is the role of Iran, because the role of Iran is definitely seen in this war. Until recently, we were basically talking about the Arab-Israeli conflict, but now we see the role of Iran more engaged in the Palestinian issue, and no need to mention, let's say, the support of the Houthis in Yemen. In accordance with the public opinion polls, how do you rate the following countries' position toward the war in Gaza? People actually, let's say, gave more, we can say, votes to Qatar and Jordan in this respect. So what is waiting for us when we look at it from Jordanian angle? Jordan is actually waiting this war to be ended as soon as possible, because Jordan is one of those countries in the region that support a two-state solution, but a workable, durable two-state solution. And Jordan is very much actually concerned with any possible migration from West Bank, because this can be something that can destabilize the kingdom. Jordan, during this period of time, is one of those supporters of the humanitarian ceasefire at the United Nations platform. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you for this very detailed presentation. I learned a lot because I'm not directly studying on the Middle East. That's why all these details were really helpful for me to understand actually what's happening. Because as you know, when we are following all these developments, especially during these missiles about these countries in between Israel and Iran, everybody was really wondering what kind of the perception exists, especially in Jordan. And you know, during those days, we were in touch to talk about this because it must be studied and understood better, maybe for the public of the Turkish, let's say, the people. It is really important. Do we have any question? Maybe it's a good idea to start with our participants. If you have any question, you may open your microphone and ask by yourself. There is no need for any permission from me. So the microphones can be opened with your own press on unmute. Yes. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Nur Hocam, for this analysis. Actually, unfortunately, I participated very late to your presentation, so I missed a great deal part of that, I guess. So just as far as I catch, I would like to ask something regarding this water problem. You have mentioned about this energy for water and the straining relations between Jordan and Israel. So just what I would like to learn is that, as you know, there are a lot of news in Gaza as well, that there are huge problems in the water supply systems, bombing of those facilities by Israel and so on and so forth. So it seems that it will be having some sort of bigger problem than it would have until now. So what's your insights about that? I mean, where that issue may go to, both between Israel and Jordan, and also between Israel and Palestinians. Thank you very much.
Ibrahim Hocam, thank you very much. I also follow you from your writings basically on water issue, and it's my pleasure to meet you. And actually, you pay attention to a very critical point. Maybe this is also related to this water issue and Jordan's dependence on Israel because of the energy and this water supply also makes Jordan's position a little bit delicate, because Jordan is not in a position today to actually pursue a policy which can be very courageous. That's why Jordan is a bit precocious and trying to actually doing, let's say, the political elites, as far as I understood, trying to look it from a more diplomatic way and trying to sort this problem as soon as possible, because that was the reason that I was referring to the foreign minister's statement that they support the two-state solution and they want this humanitarian crisis to end as soon as possible, because the delaying of this humanitarian ceasefire and continuation of this war is definitely going to have detrimental effects on Jordan's economy, not just its political relations within the region, but as you just mentioned, these energy and water, let's say, projects has become a source of critique by the opposition as well. But on the one hand, Jordan is in need of these kind of partnerships. And this is also another reason why Jordan and Israel, they normalize their relations. It is also how we use in IR theories complex interdependency. But on the other hand, the unsettlement of the Palestinian question is still there. And the Middle East borders are permeable, Hocam, as you know. So a Palestinian issue can be a matter for the Jordanian citizens, and we should also consider that let's say we have also Palestinian Jordanians in this country, that they are very much sensitive about this question. So what Jordan probably is waiting for is immediate, perhaps the ceasefire in order to solve these problems. So Jordan is actually one of those countries who would like to act as a pragmatic in this respect. Maybe I can also relate it with the Gulf countries. The Gulf countries as well, they are not, referring to those Arab nationalism days of the 60s and 70s, but rather more nationalisms that they would like to, focus on their partnership with Israel based on pragmatism. But in order to talk about this, of course, perhaps we need to see a possible, let's say, ceasefire or any possible talks.
Thank you very much, Hocam.
Thank you, Hocam.
Thank you. So do we have another question? Do you have any question? Maybe when we are waiting for the any other question, I may ask something. When I was watching your let's say the research findings about the trend related with this let's say the rising nationalism, because I consider it as a kind of rise, because what you say, this is not a matter of Palestinians, it's a matter of Arabic people, so the whole Arabs matter. So it reminds me a kind of turning back to the, let's say, the previous perception. So what you say is actually is for more normalization by transforming this nationalism on the base of nation states like Jordan, Egypt, Tunisia, but now the trend is going back towards this, much more Arabic nationalism because of the existing problem in Palestine. So shall we consider that the resolution of the Palestinian problem from that approach is critical to understand this, let's say, the normal as a key of normalization in the region? Why I ask this? Because today we are talking about religious radicalism more related with what when we say Palestine. So can we say that actually the essence of the problem is not religious, it is nationalistic from this approach?
Well, Zuhal Hocam, it's a hard question actually. But what I observe, particularly with respect to the Gulf region, why I also refer to Gulf region, because we have UAE, Bahrain, and as I said, Saudi Arabia is one of those possible actors that can normalize its ties with Israel. This was the discourse and the practice just before the 7th of October. The Gulf countries, they're having new economic policies, and they are in need of economic partners, and they are rather looking, let's say, they are trying to construct their foreign policies from a more pragmatic and rational point of view. However, with this war, it seems like that, as I just also show in the figures, let's say the people in the Arab street, they still have something to see about the Palestinian issue, because this war led us, the Arab world, but not just the Arab world, but also international community, to see the fact that there is a problem in the region. Because the Palestinian issue before this war actually lost its salience in the international system. Now we started to talk about Palestine as not, let's say, not number one issue, at least for the last 6 months. So this is another, perhaps like Jordan, the balancing policy that the countries in the region, they need to take into consideration. But I don't think that they will be retreating from their rational foreign policy making. They will take into consideration their relations and continue their normalizations with relations with Israel. But I think the role of Saudi Arabia can be very crucial in this respect to create that balance, because we know that since 2002, with the Arab Peace Initiative, Arabia was the leading country bringing into consideration a peace plan. And Saudi Arabia is a very important actor in terms of the Gulf region, and particularly after the Arab uprisings. We should not also underestimate the role of Egypt, because Egypt is also another important country that normalized its tie with Israel, and it's the first country actually recognizing Israel in the region. And Qatar, we need to also probably refer to Qatar, because with Egypt, Qatar also emerged as an important actor during the let's say as a mediator, you know, when we started to see this let's say attacks. So we will see, but I think we need to also take into consideration that most of the countries in the region, they definitely take into consideration their regime security. I don't actually, I mean, I can't say that we have the same, almost, let's say, the same climate that we had during 50s and 60s when we have Jamal Abdel Nasser, you know, the emergence of Arab nationalism and Baathism. But perhaps we may have, it seems like that the citizens of the Arab street, they give attention, they pay attention to the Palestinian issue, but perhaps the content of this, let's say, understanding is a bit different from the 50s and 60s, I can say. And with the Arab uprisings, when we have seen the Arab people, let's say, on the streets, they were rather actually asking political change and economic equality, economic rights. So I can say that maybe this content of nationalism has changed, because it's not also the regional conjuncture that we had during 50s and 60s.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, it is really difficult to take all these things into one analysis. I can understand you are working on a very difficult geography. I'm much luckier. Here, Antonia Dimu is with us also. She is also studying about Jordan. Would you like to add a few things, or do you have any comment, Antonia?
Thank you so much. Sorry, I've been a little bit late, so I missed the great part of the presentation. Well, I would like to ask a question. What do you think are the red lines when it comes from the Jordanian perspective, when it comes to political settlement between the Israelis and the Palestinians? And to what extent we heard about the role of Saudi Arabia, of Qatar, but to what extent can the United Arab Emirates, as one of the pioneers of the Abraham Accords, can be in terms of facilitating economic development projects which are necessary to improve the livelihoods of the two sides, the Israelis and the Palestinians? Thank you so much for hosting us, Zuhari. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this timely question as well. Well, if I can give several red lines, at least for the Kingdom of Jordan, one of the main things that Jordan considered as a priority is perhaps the continuation of the custodianship over East Jerusalem, Haram al-Sharif, and the holy sites in East Jerusalem. I think this is very important for the Hashemites. And the second red line, which is definitely a concern for Jordan, is not to be treated as an alternative homeland for Palestine, which is, the Arabic version, al-Watan al-Badil. This is actually the key, perhaps, pillar that always shapes Jordan's policy vis-a-vis the Palestine-Israeli conflict. I think I can definitely say it straightforward.
Thank you for your answer. So actually, maybe it's a good idea to have a face-to-face in-person meeting about these things to talk more and longer. But as you know, the online meetings need to be limited in time. Thanks for your valuable contribution, dear Nur Köprülü. Thanks for being with us today. This was very beneficial for all of us. And thank you also for all these, let's say, the participants today with your questions. You enriched our discussion. So please follow our programs, events through our, let's say, the YouTube channel and also our social media accounts. We wish you a very good evening. Thanks again for participation. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Zuhal Hocam. Thank you very much, my dear colleagues. Thanks for hosting me. It was so nice to, let's say, to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.